And we're live. How you guys doing? I hope everything is good. Yeah, so let's get a few people online and then I'll jump into the subject at hand and we'll take it from there. So again, as I posted in the community aspect of YouTube, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to OOP, what it is all about and why software developers implement it, why do they use it. It's a style of programming. And then I'm going to show you, we'll have about a 6-minute tutorial on creating a basic object in Python. This is actually just derived from my Python course. And then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. It's a little bit of a truncated short version. I usually do 40 minutes here. So yeah, that's about it. So again, I'm just going to wait for 40 people to jump on. You'll be able to watch this in a replay. So that's it. I hope everybody is well. And so this is a bit of a specialized subject, so I'm not expecting a huge audience here. We'll see. Podravís, I don't know what that means, but hey, I hope everything is well. So, can I get a coupon for the Python course? Yes, you can. Look underneath the, in this video, there is a coupon for 50% off. Huge. Hello, Joseph from New York. I hope everything is well with you. Hi. Thanks for joining in. So are we at, it's a little slow. So let me just jump into it because I got a meeting with a business meeting coming up pretty soon. So various OOP Python, of course. You'll see it in a few minutes here. So let me just give you a quick introduction. So object-oriented programming is a style of programming. There's different styles. There's procedural, functional, object-oriented, etc. For the most part, most apps are written in object-oriented methodology, whether it be Python, whether it be Java, JavaScript, C++, PHP, etc., etc. Now, you're going to have people who argue that procedural is better, and other people might say functional is better, etc., etc. It depends on the use case of the situation. Basically, what it comes down to, in some situations, object-oriented programming is superior. In some situations, functional programming may be superior. From my experience, going back to the 90s, most of the time, leveraging some sort of object-oriented paradigm, some object-oriented language, it could be Python, it could be PHP, it could be C#, it could be Java, C++, whatever. Most of the time, object-oriented programming is very useful. So what are some of the useful aspects? First of all, when you put into place object-oriented coding, you are getting a whole bunch of capabilities that you would not otherwise get if you were just using simple procedural. So in object-oriented languages, there's all kinds of automatic capabilities that come into play. There may be some simple examples in this video that's coming up, but in the actual course itself, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff that happens. So right away, first advantage, you get extra capabilities that come with object-oriented code. The second thing, object-oriented code gives you a method of organizing your code in a way that people can understand. When you have more and more developers involved in a project, there's a huge advantage to having a standardized methodology. This means it's just easier for people to understand how to get on board. It's like driving a car. If you sit in a car, you know where the brake is and the gas is. For every single car, they don't put the brake and the gas pedal in different places. So this is huge. So yeah, sorry about that. So there is this advantage of a standardization or standard process that you're going to get with object-oriented programming. So this becomes more important as the project gets bigger. If you're writing a very simple 1-page, 2-page web app or something that's very simple, then OO code won't have much of an advantage for you. OO is short for object-oriented code. But as the project gets bigger, OO-based systems really start to shine because you can start separating out aspects or parts of your program into different components. And when you have more and more developers involved in the project, you can put, John on this component and Nancy on this component and Nick on this component. And so it allows you to separate out the workload as well. This becomes also very handy when you are building a code base. I can tell you this from multiple experiences this way. When you have an object-based, object-oriented based code base, it's easier to maintain because you got that separation of elements within the project. Again, sometimes in certain projects, you might want to go functional, you might want to go procedural. But I think most of the time, for most of the projects that you're going to probably see out there, in general programming, OO comes into place. Now, object-oriented programming, there's a lot to it. And there's all kinds of, as I said, built-in capability when you start writing OO code. So you start writing object-oriented Python code, you got extra capability that comes included. Start writing extra Java code, you got extra ability that comes included. So this is all very, it's all very helpful. It's all very helpful when you're writing the code. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually play back this lesson from my Python course, which is the first lesson on OOP. And then when we get back, we'll do some Q&A and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about object-oriented programming, okay? So let's just jump into it and we'll talk very soon. All right, so now we're going to jump into something called object-oriented programming. Now, object-oriented programming is a style of programming that you see in many languages out there, not just Python. You have Python, C#, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Ruby, Swift. All these languages have object-oriented programming included in them. So what exactly is object-oriented programming? You can think of it as a style of programming where you write your code in the form of objects. So that probably doesn't make much sense to you. Think of it this way. Think of when we create a function in Python, and with the Python function, we're able to include all kinds of code. Sometimes the code could be variables, sometimes it could be conditionals like if statements, sometimes it could be loops like whiles and for loops and so on. We can put a whole bunch of code inside of a function. Kind of cool. So then with a function code, we can reuse the function by calling the function. We've seen this, we know all about this, yada, yada, yada. So with an object, you can think of it as a giant, super powerful function. An object is a package of code, and inside of an object, you can include a whole bunch of functions. You can include a whole bunch of variables and all kinds of other code in there. And the added bonus is when you do create an object with Python, Python will automatically give that code, that object code that you create, a whole bunch of extra power. And that's just one reason why you would want to create objects with your Python code. There's a whole bunch of other reasons as well. Object-oriented programming makes it easy for you to think about, to conceive of, to kind of plan out your app, your program. So by organizing your program in the form of objects, which we're going to do very soon, you will have a much easier time of organizing, especially bigger projects. There's much more to it than that, but that's just the intro. So what I want to do now is create our very first object in Python. Ready? So let's launch our code editor right here. And you see a comment at the top. We know it's a comment because of the number sign here. Now, I'm not going to mention that anymore because by this time we should know. So how do you create a object? Well, we use a special keyword called class. And you're going, why do we use the keyword class to create an object? Shouldn't we have the keyword object? That's a very good question, and we're going to get into that in a second. But for now, just write out this code as I'm doing. So class car, again, let me fix something. Because it's a class or an object, we use the convention in Python is to use a capital for the name of your class, like that. So before I had a lowercase c. Now, by putting it a capital C, it makes it more clear that this is an object. You know, in coding, you have conventions, things that you should do or should not do to make your life as a nerd easier. So That's what we do with objects. So now we're going to use our docstring. We've seen this before, right? Triple quotes. So now we're going to leave some information about our class. So we're going to say a simple class that describes a car. For now, a class is an object is a class. That's not exactly correct, but you can think of it that way for now. We'll understand the little differences later on. So you can think of a class like a giant function, except that inside of our class definition, this is kind of like when we go class car, it's kind of like going def car if car was a function. But because we use class keyword instead of the def keyword, Python knows that it's an object or it's a class. So now we're going to create our own functions. So this is a special function that every class can have. And I'm going to explain this in a second. So just bear with me for now. Self type cost. So we can't use type. See, it turns purple. It's probably reserved word. So model cost. We're going to use our comments here, and we're going to say initialize the object. Don't worry, I'm going to explain what this all means once we get into it. But that, as you know, the triple quotes, it leaves a comment behind. And then we're going to go self.model equals model. Don't worry, we'll explain this soon. Self.cost equals cost. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's now define another function. We're going to call it start. And we're going to put in self. Now, when you're doing objects in Python, self is a special keyword that we need to use. So I'm going to just leave it in there, leave it as a mystery now. We'll learn about self in the next video. So starts the car. Little notes to ourselves. And then I'm going to say, I'm just going to be really simple. I'm going to get print. And I'm going to say self.model.title plus is now starting. There's more to this class car that we're going to build, but for now, I want you to pause the video, stop the video, and write out this code. And in the next video, I'm going to start breaking this down. We're going to complete our class, and then I'm going to break down all this stuff, what init is and self is, and why we have self here and here, etc., etc., etc. When you're learning object-oriented programming, by the way, you're entering the realms of the super nerd. So congratulations. All right, so there you go. That was a lesson from my Python course, the very first of the OOP stuff. I figured I'd just give you a quick look at what it's all about. I don't show code demos often on the live streams because I have all the videos all ready to go. So there you go. So that's just a quick taste of what it is all about. Again, one thing about object-oriented programming, there's a lot of capability built in. And you, like so many other things in software development, you don't have to use all of the capabilities. For example, one thing that I state, and it's a little controversial for some people, especially young nerdlings, is that I don't believe that you should use inheritance, which is a basic mechanism built into object-oriented programming. All the object-oriented programming languages have this basic fundamental thing, or this fundamental construct about object-oriented programming is inheritance. I believe inheritance should be used rarely. I've talked about this in other videos. I won't go into the reasons why here, because I assume you guys are beginners. But it's there for you for some occasions. So there you go. That's it. As you saw one of the comments, some people said, not everything should be an object. No, not everything should be an object. But it's if you're building a complex system, I think it's a good way to do it. And you don't, again, when you don't implement everything that is there. You don't implement every aspect of object-oriented programming inside of your object-oriented software. That is for sure. Again, that's another rule. It comes with experience where just because you have a technology that's available to you, it doesn't mean you should implement that technology. I hope that makes sense. So just because it's there doesn't mean you should just use it. You should use it when you need to use it, right? Need to nerd basis, old principle. Again, everything that I teach is based on my decades of experience, not years, but decades. So it's in real world use here. So there you go. That was just a very tiny little taste of object-oriented programming. And the great thing is that when you learn object-oriented programming in Python, all of a sudden you know object-oriented programming in just about all of the languages. Yes, there are differences here and there. And the way Python may do certain things is a little bit different than the way it will be done in Java or C# or PHP. But you'll have like 90% of it, perhaps, 90% of it. That's why, when you learn the hardest programming language to learn, the hardest time for you to learn OOP is going to be the first time. After that, it gets much easier. And in fact, I encourage people to learn multiple programming languages, because when you learn JavaScript and then you learn Python and then you learn PHP or Java, whatever you want, you'll be able to compare and contrast how each language does things. And in fact, in my mentoring group, we have Zoom meetings every other week. One of the guys was saying how when he did the Python course, all of a sudden the JavaScript became much more clear to him. He started understanding JavaScript better by doing Python. So that's why in my full stack course, in my mentoring program, I teach 3 programming languages. You may only use one when you first start out your career for a while, but having done the 3, that compare and contrast capability is going to make you much more knowledgeable. It's like driving high-performance cars. You drive BMW and Audi, and then you drive something like a normal Toyota or something. You're going to start really understanding automobiles and cars and power and handling much better because you're able to compare and contrast. So there you go. Fortran for life, yeah. Stefan, is polymorphism achieved by means of interfaces in PHP? You can do it through inheritance. Interfaces is the way I prefer to design. I don't actively write code these days because I just manage stuff. But I'm a big believer in interface-based design. And a lot of people, experienced people will tell you that design by interface, it actually became an expression in the late 90s, early 2000s. They used to say design by interface, not by inheritance. It's just a better way. The problem, Mamma Mia will be, all right, so the problem with, that's a joke from last stream. The problem with object-oriented, inheritance-based design is that you can create brittle code bases that way because your objects are too tightly coupled. So when you use an interface, which is a construct, it's built into the object-oriented programming, which you'll learn about if you take one of my courses. But if you use interface-based design, you have the key advantages of object-oriented coding with an interface without some of the disadvantages. So it's kind of a middle ground. Thanks, I'm glad you like that. Let's see what we got here. Ali says, hello, would it be possible for someone who has Canadian PR to get into web dev industry without having any Canadian qualification? Who has Canadian PR? What does PR mean? I don't know what that means. Without having any Canadian qualifications. The thing about the web stack, it's much more, for a lot of businesses, it's much more about experience than it is about qualifications. So if you got a really strong portfolio, then you can get a job. Hey, Stefan, can you make a future of live stream or video about startups? Sure. Yeah, one of my friends, his startups is going like this. He's supposed to come on at some point. He's a former mentee of mine, actually. So his startup is going gangbusters now. So that's very cool. Stefan, hello again. Have you dealt with any coding in control systems? I don't know what you mean by control system, sorry. Abstraction, yeah. Oh, public relations. Introspective mail. Let me go back to the original question. Hey, Stefan, would it be possible for someone who has Canadian public relations to get into web dev industry without having any Canadian qualification? No, I don't know if that means that. For a newbie, should I go TypeScript instead of JavaScript while learning full stack? If you want to get a job, go JavaScript, unless there's a lot of TypeScript jobs in your area, But generally speaking, I think, and it's not a statement on the quality of the language, it's just a statement on, a job availability. Can you use Python for mobile development apps? I think there is, not too many people do it. I would use Python in the PWA context. So you're using a web stack, HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript front end, and then you use your Python the back end to handle the back end systems, Django or something. I would think of Python in the context of a PWA. Yeah. What else? Hello, JavaScript microcomponents resources. Couldn't say. Okay, if yes, what is the best framework to achieve front end and back end apps? Well, I know the most popular for Python for the back end is Django. I don't know what the front ends are these days. I couldn't say. Hey, Stef, I'm talking C++ and Python both at the same time. Next college semester, am I screwed? Haha. No. Listen, I do it all the time. I'll mix up syntax between languages, and I will basic behavior of, you can do this in Python. No, that's Java, or, oh, you can do this in JavaScript. Oh, no, that's PHP. So whatever. That's why you have IDEs, and you just fix it. It's not a big deal. No, it's good. Trust me. You may have a little bit of a hurdle to deal with when you're learning two different languages at the same time, especially C++ and Python. They're a little different in syntax-wise, etc. And also how and where they're applied. They're kind of used in different use cases, generally speaking. But in the end, you'll be very well off having knowing two languages. How do I make money? What should I invest in? Well, first thing to do is invest in yourself. You need some skill sets that are valuable. Then, and that includes first, coding is kind of the low-hanging fruit. What I mean by that is it's the easiest way to make money quickly is with coding. And the web stack is probably the best choice for most people. And then after that, you should invest in communication skills. I always talk about that. That's why in my mentoring, I am including communication skills. Very important. Hey, Sebastian, how long should one take through each module of your web course? 1 week HTML, 2 weeks CSS, 1 week JS. Please advise, what do you think is a good pace? Well, the beautiful thing about modern education, and I've been working with schools for about a decade now, in terms of providing a curriculum and software to teach code in the schools. And I also come from a family of teachers, my father, etc. So modern education dictates that it's best to leave it to the student in terms of how fast it should happen. You may find, for example, that you blast through HTML in two days. And then you hit CSS. Now, CSS is a much bigger subject, so that might take you a month. Somebody else, it might take them 3 weeks. Somebody else might take them 3 months. It really depends. So you might come in, and let's say you finish your CSS in 2 weeks. You're a baller. You go, boom, you finish your CSS in 2 weeks. And somebody else, it takes them 4 weeks. But then you get to JavaScript, and because of just the way your brain is made up, it takes you a month, but the guy who took longer to do the CSS, he's able to plow through the JavaScript in half the time. So whether it takes you a month or 2 weeks or 2 months, it doesn't really matter, because once you know it, you know it. And nobody's going to care whether you learn JavaScript in a month or 3 months. Nobody's going to care. Doesn't matter, So one of the things that, in modern education is that they allow students to learn at their own pace, because different students different individuals have different aptitudes in different areas. So to impose a strict structure on everybody is kind of like old school. That's what they used to do, 500,000 years ago, It's better to make it, you have to have a structure, and there is a structure for sure, and there's suggestions. It's about just daily activity, daily effort towards your end goal. And again, if it takes you an extra month to get to that goal, that doesn't matter, as long as you have a consistent exposure to the material so that your brain habituates to it. And for a lot of people, you're going to be literally rewiring your brain to a certain extent as you learn to code. Because when you learn to code, you learn to think in a totally different way. And on the flip side, if you're a very code-centric type of person, an introvert, and then if you do the mentoring program where you get into the section on the lizard wizard, which is all the psychology and the communications training, that's going to be very unusual for you, right? And that's good. Whenever you hit a certain level of resistance and certain stuff is hard for you, that's good. That means you're breaking new ground. It's like bodybuilders, right? If you always just lift light weight and you don't put pressure on your muscle, you're not going to build your body. Same thing with your brain. So you have to expose it to new ideas, new ways of thinking, so that you build it. You build this mental muscle, if you will. I hope that helps. All right, let's go down. If you know TypeScript, then you know JavaScript by default. Exactly, yeah. Basically, every big company uses TypeScript instead of JavaScript. Yeah, there's a lot of advantages there. That's if you want to work for a big company. Hello from Bournemouth, UK. Would it be okay to do a portfolio site with WordPress? Why not? Why not? How can one join your mentorship program? There's a link below this video where you can take a look. I'm going to be updating that quite a bit. I launched a mentorship program about 7 months ago or so, give or take, and it's great. We've got a lot of people who signed up, and I'm going to really expand it very soon because I have fun with it. What should I pair with your full stack developer course? I would get into the Python afterwards, just to expose yourself to another language. And then I would jump into, do a couple of freelance jobs, because when you do a couple of freelance jobs, it's like if you were training to fight. It's like getting away from hitting the heavy bag and doing drills to actually jumping in the ring and fighting. The great thing about doing freelance work is that you don't get your nose broken. So it's cool. Is web going to collapse in 10 years? No, I think web is actually going to be the dominant player. It already is, but I think it's going to even be more of a dominant player in terms of application development. I've talked about this several occasions. Why? Desktop apps nowadays, it is alive. It's nichey now. You need it for heavy lifting type of apps like Photoshop or 3D animation software, video editing. But when it comes to business apps, all about web. In the old days, back in the early 90s, small businesses, they would develop all their apps just about with Visual Basic, which was desktop only. And boy, was it so easy to develop. But then the web sort of came about. Stefan, microcomponents in JavaScript JS is useless in web pages. I have not used microcomponents or microcomponents-based JavaScript, but I have to take a look at that. What, according to you, is a downside for using Python? The only problem with Python is that it's not very fast at processing, at runtime. But, as I've said many times, speed of runtime is much less important than speed of write time. That's why Python is so bloody popular. It's just like, it's many lists, I think it's number one, number two in popularity, for a bunch of reasons. But the main reason is it's easy to work with, and that's more important. Now, so that's why I tell people you got to be language neutral or agnostic. You choose the language based on the job at hand. You don't be a language zealot. I used to be that way. Listen, back in the early 90s, mid-90s, late 90s, for me, I was the Java guy. And everything I would just say, we're going to do in Java. Java's the best. But then I was forced into it, kicking and screaming because of certain clients, to use other technologies, other languages, and so forth. And I learned a lot by doing that. By the way, I learned that yes, PHP, especially back then, was really primitive compared to Java. But you know what? For certain things, it was actually superior. For certain things, so it really depends on what you're doing. I mentioned PHP simply because that was the first time I was forced outside of my Java shell, if you will. Always beware, people will tell you that this language is the best ever and everything else sucks. That is a good indicator of inexperience. That being said, in certain circumstances, there's always a superior language given the circumstances. I see job posting as CSS engineers. What do you think about that? Well, listen, job postings are job postings. CSS can get pretty complex at times. So, it can be pretty complex, especially with layout. But if 1 + 1 isn't equal to 2, how much is 3? All right. How to practically start embedding your JS code in your CSS. You should not embed JS code directly into your HTML. Well, hold on a second. Wait a second. How to practically start embedding your JS code into your HTML and CSS. Yeah, you should not embed your JS code directly into your HTML and CSS. That's a big no-no. They used to do that a long time ago. In my course, I teach you how to do it. There's different ways you can leverage JavaScript in your pages. The worst way is to actually have what they call inline JavaScript, as in the line. It's like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That's bad. You should have all your HTML and CSS here, and you should have your JavaScript imported through an external file, and then you can use mechanisms built into JavaScript to allow you to use JavaScript. Anyway, I teach that in a course. So, thanks. I appreciate that, Sadiq. Yeah, please give me feedback, good or bad, when I explain things. I am not purposely skipping you. I get a lot of comments, I'm just, I catch, okay, here we go. Can I get a remote job in the US or Canada, or maybe a remote one? I'm in Morocco, by the way. What do I need? If you have a degree, it helps quite a bit, but what you should do is put up a really good looking website, show your skills, show that you've worked with other companies, do a couple freebies. That's what it would do. All right, let's go on. I'm learning more from books than I did in my 4-year CS degree. Yep. Unfortunately, that is the case a lot of times. When is Lizard Wizard coming out? It's coming out pretty soon. Pretty bloody soon. I've been working on it for quite a while now. And I've recorded a whole bunch of stuff. And then I went, I don't like it. In the garbage. And so I'm organizing. I think I'm going to start releasing it in kind of like a live course where... the core of it is released, and then it will be within the Studio Web Learning SaaS. And then components will be released, and you'll get access to those components as they come out. And I think with that course, I'm going to have also an audio version of it as well, because it's not coding, so you don't really necessarily need to see me. Although in my Lizard Wizard course, I'll be doing all kinds of this and that, all kinds of hand movements. So that might, if you're listening, you won't be able to see those great hand movements. All right, let's go on. Hey, Stefan, I know HTML, CSS, Java, PHP so far is a good start. It's a great start. So now your next step is to actually do some real work, even for free. Like projects that take you 3 days to do. Very important that you do some real work. Just like those fighters who train in the gyms and they just hit the pads all day in the heavy bag, they gotta grow. They gotta grow some confidence, and they gotta get into the ring and actually do some fighting. So you've done a lot there. It's time for you to get in and actually do some real work. Okay? Hey, Stefan, do you think a social media PWA built with Django and Vue would be a good mobile user experience? Why not? Instagram has a PWA, right? I have a difficult time telling the difference. So why not? For sure. 100%. Jean-Carlo Roman, what do you think about full-stack JavaScript engineers? Do they have their place in this industry? Well, why not? Sure. You got your answer. I am a student. Hi from Turkey. Hi from Canada. Yeah. Let's go on. I love poop. There we go. All right. Visual Studio versus Xcode versus Android Studio. Is there a better IDE, and should someone learn use? So, what's going on here? Should someone learn user all feature in IDE? No. You learn the basics, and maybe do like a quick the quick tour. They'll highlight the most important elements. You don't need to know everything. It's like, again, if you try to learn everything, you're never going to get any work done and make money. So just learn what you need to learn, and then you learn other things on the side a little bit here and there. Like even your own operating system. I've been using Windows and Mac for 200 years now. I don't know half of what these operating systems do, Let's go down. Let's see what we got. Mr. Out, how are we doing? Okay, 36 minutes. We're going to have to close this off pretty soon. I conceptually understand data structures, but I'm having trouble with implementation. What do you think I can do to be better implementation? Start implementing. It's that simple. I know it sounds silly. It's just really that simple. It's amazing how much you start conceptually and really deeply understanding code, whether it be data structures or object orientation or separation of concerns, whatever concepts and techniques you can think of. It's amazing how much quicker and how much more you understand by actually doing it. I'm telling you right now, if you write one app, maybe 2,000 lines of code or 5,000 lines of code, you'll learn more writing that over a period of a couple of weeks than you will spending 3 months trying to understand concepts by reading or watching tutorials. Just jump in, man. Don't worry. People make mistakes. Thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. Let's go on here. Let's see what we got. How difficult would you say is getting back-end engineer job as a first tech role? I hear front-end is easier, but worry I am being delusional. No, you just got to show your skill, dude, right? You got to show your skill. I got to put out that video, how to get a job, what you got to do, what are the steps. If you don't have a degree, then you would go after a smaller business or a medium-sized business, all right? And again, demonstrate your skill. So one of the things you got to do is you got to put up your website and you got to show that you got the back-end skills. Show it. There are other super chats. I want to see if there's questions associated with them. Let me just scroll back up if I catch them. What's this one? What's a good way? I apologize for missing the super chats. This is kind of new for me. What's a good way to practice OOP before learning a framework? Pick a project, like write a simple login system and create your objects hierarchy and write out. It doesn't have to be complex. Just write code and think about how you can separate a project into logical components, okay? It could be a simple game, right? It could be a simple game. I believe in the Python course, I'm not sure if I'm using OOP to build the game or not. I may be. I have to look at it again. But here's the other one. My apologies for missing this introspective mail. Hi, Stef. Planning on buying a course soon. I have purchased other courses and have not been fully satisfied with the quality. Yeah, well, you got the money back guarantee. If you look at the reviews on Google, go to Google Business, My Business. You see the Studio Web reviews. I decided to get rid of my internal reviews. Just use Google and other external sources because I feel it's just more transparent that way. And one of the common things I hear from people over and over again is that they've tried all kinds of other courses, then they've done mine, and then they understand. So yeah, a little shameless self-promotion there. My apologies. But yeah, it will work. Trust me, I don't consider yourself a nerd. It's a skill that should be taken with pride. No, I don't I appreciate it. I don't consider nerd as an insult. It's just a joke. I want to see sharks. Yeah, my buddy took those pictures. I think he was diving off of Florida. Tiger sharks, huge. So I thought that was a cool picture. Please, Stefan, JS web functionality. What tangible things can you build with any JS resources? I'm done with JS, but seems useless functions, objects. Well, you use JS a lot for DOM manipulation, document object model manipulation on terms of the client side. It's a good way. You want to do, as a first level of defense, you want to do client side, meaning JavaScript-based validation of form input. It's just a very quick ways without having to go back to the server to get it. To get a validation routine done, it's a fallback because you always got to, any JS in a browser can be hacked. So you use JavaScript as an example, the classic example, to do your basic validation. So let's say, I don't know, you want somebody to enter an email address. So you can use JavaScript to check whether or not the email address they entered is properly formed. And but when you do, before they submit the form, and when they do submit the form and it passes the JavaScript checks, then you have to validate, of course, on the server as well. Because as I said, JS can be hacked on the client end. Laravel or Django to look for first dev job. Just look at the job market. You know what I mean? Just look at the job market, and that will determine that for you. They're both good platforms. 2 thumbs up for all your help. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the live stream and how questions are answered. Good. I'm glad. All right. So, please, Stefan. Okay. I'll answer a few more and then I have to go. Please, Stefan, my CSS styling on Notepad is not responding on Internet Explorer. Please help me out. Yeah, Internet Explorer, it's got such a small use space. There are methodologies in CSS, so you can have code that just is targeting IE. But I would look at the use case, the usage of Internet Explorer these days. It may be highly used in your area and your target market. Maybe you're using it, it's an intranet and all the business computers are using IE. I don't know. But these days, I think IE use is really, really low now. So I wouldn't bother about that, for the most part. Okay. A few more questions and I gotta go. Creating simple text-based console games are how I practice OOP as a beginning Python programmer. Exactly. Just yesterday I wrote a card game where I made a class for a playing card. Fantastic. Exactly. Yeah, it's fun too. I'm not sure. I think in my Python course, it's a whole chapter on OOP and we build something. I think it's a game, but I'm not sure yet. I have to go look. All right. I appreciate it. All right. Let's see. 2 more questions. How to build a note-taking app similar to Note app on iOS, but built it for Android. How to build a note-taking app. That's a pretty simple thing, You could do that. You could probably do that PWA, and but if you could probably crack that out pretty quick in natively, whether Kotlin for Android or so on. Here we go. From our interest rate, I am making money as a freelance web developer, but I want to enhance my knowledge and skills so that I can offer more to market. Excited. Cool. That's the right attitude. So you're already getting going, and you can start, letting the market guide you in terms of which direction you want to go. As a freelancer, the key is really developing really solid workflows so that you can maximize your earnings. So let's say I'm just going to use a round number. So let's say you're charging $50 an hour, or whatever it's 10, whatever it is. And it typically takes you 10 hours to complete a particular job in the beginning. If with practice and workflows and proper management of your clients, you can take that 10 hours and turn to 5 hours. But most clients, as you know, they're going to want a solid bid on, this project's going to cost $1,000 or this project's going to cost $500. They're going to ask you your per hour rate, but they're going to say, okay, well, how much total cost? That's how it always, and they won't agree to per diem, which means you're running the numbers. Anyhow, so the way it works is, okay, so let's say in the beginning it'll take you 10 hours to build a particular project, but with practice and good workflows, all of a sudden you cut that down to only 5 hours, half the time. But you're still competitive and you can charge that original 10 hour. So all of a sudden, instead of making 50 an hour, you're making 100 an hour. You get the idea? So whether if you're in Bangladesh or something where, a house is much less expensive, so your per hour rate is much less. So you go from $10 the hour or $5 an hour, you can go to, you double it up all the time. And you do that through good workflows. Okay? All right. No problem, Deepak. I hope I'm glad to help. I really enjoy this. That's why I do them, Would you ever consider doing portfolio reviews as part of his live chats? That's a good idea. I'm going to be doing them. I'm doing them in the mentoring group. That's part of the, private consultation, review portfolio, so on. But maybe we'll see. We'll see how it is. Let's see what Sadiq has to say. Abandoned IE, Internet Explorer. I lost about 40K in scope creeps on a freelance project that required IE8. IE8, oof, 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 oof. There used to be a tag just for IE. I forget what it's called now. It used to just, and you just have you would just override your CSS inside of this tag, and only IE would read that, so only that code would read that. I forget what it is now. It's been a while. All right. Us two. Hi, Stefan. Which very new language or technology excites you the most? Nothing to do with money or market. Oh. I think, like everybody else, I think AI is really cool. In terms of frameworks and so forth, I looked at Flutter when it first came out in beta. I thought that was very cool stuff. So, life is hard. Well, yeah, depending. But the fact that you're on the internet and you can post "life is hard" tells me that life it might be hard perceptually, but compared to a lot of people, your life is a lot better than them since you can actually post that. That being said, that can all be managed. Your perception of reality and how you feel, that's all lizard brain stuff, dude. That's all lizard brain stuff, Sometimes life is genuinely hard. If you're in jail or you're hung up by your ankles from a tree, that's pretty hard. But other times, a lot of it is just perceptual. When I have a question like that, I search sites like Udemy and YouTube, see if I can find any instructional videos. I look up VR Python last week and I couldn't find any courses. Yeah, Python VR. I never heard of that. Yeah, Flutter is growing exponentially. Yeah, I'm not surprised. As I said, when Flutter was released, you can go check. I looked at it and I said, that's a technology to look at. So arrogant. Life is a function of gratitude. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, if you generally have a good disposition, then it seems to benefit you in many, many, many ways. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go because I got to call up one of my accountants. When are the life coach course going to love your takes on things? Well, that's with Lizard Wizard is going to be part of it. I'm looking to expand upon that. I got all the code covered in my Studio Web code courses, the Python, the WebStack, etc. I got a lot of that covered. So I'm going to start expanding into that. I have a few components in the mentoring. I have automatic health. I have finance freedom. I have Lizard Wizard and communication skills. Of course, there's also the freelance entrepreneur skills. Again, all based on my personal experience. Okay. When's the release of Lizard Wizard course? Very, very, very soon. Very, very soon. I'm getting a lot of people interested, so I gotta get it out, right? All right, guys. Yes, Node.js is good. It's definitely good. Last one. I like answering young Sebastian here. I'm 18 next September and taking computer science. What can I expect? Much love from Italy. You're gonna expect moments where you go, "Mamma mia, I don't understand this." I grew up with Italians. No. There's going to be moments of frustration, but then you're going to have moments after you go, "Wow, now I understand." So all I suggest is just stay calm, keep learning every day, and when you do hit roadblocks, you hit parts that are a little bit difficult, don't worry about it. That just means you're learning new things, and you just have to have patience and just plow through. Trust me, you'll come to understand it. Especially at 18, your brain is very malleable right now. Your brain is very spongy. So you'll learn a lot faster than, say, somebody who's 60 years old. All right? So is competitive programming a gimmick? I don't put much weight in it personally. Okay? All right, guys. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll lead this off as usual with my ASMR boat video where you can take in slow breathing and relax, calm yourself down, and yeah, it'll be fun. Thanks a lot, Stef. Thanks for the live stream. Laugh out loud. Happened to me last year, of course. It was indeed. Yeah. All right, guys. We'll talk soon. Cape Elizabeth, Maine. Fantastic place. If you have a chance, go visit it. The lobster is amazing, and the views are amazing.